All right, the 2025-2026 college football season comes to a close, and it ends with the Indiana Hoosiers winning their first national championship, taking down the Miami Hurricanes 27-21 in what ended up being a pretty entertaining football game. Indiana looked to be in control up front at the beginning of the game, but Miami settled in offensively and made this a close game. Five huge plays, five game-changing plays, which was the Miami offsides on a third and long. Indiana was just going to retreat, running a draw play on third and 15, 18. Ruben Bain Jr., I believe it was him that was offside by just a fraction. And that ended up getting Indiana an extra down on third down. They ended up converting it, marched down the field, scored the first touchdown of the game. And that turned the tide for the Indiana offense and put even more pressure on the Miami defense. Second play, of course, there was the special teams block punt, blocked easily blocked it. I don't know what number 87 Bauman was thinking, but he didn't even try to block. Indiana gets an easy block, scored a touchdown. That was pretty much the game. And then the other plays are basically the back shoulder throws to Charlie Becker and then the Fernando Mendoza rushing touchdown. Huge play on fourth down. Signetti goes for a back-to-back on fourth down, ends up paying off. Carson Beck has one more chance to score a touchdown to win the game, get all the glory for Miami Hurricanes, and his career ends on a high note. But except he throws an interception, underthrows his wide receiver. If he throws it deep, closer to the end zone, maybe he has a chance at it. But he got a little too greedy. They should have kept coming down the field, marching along. But doesn't matter. Indiana wins. Signetti wins the national championship, and Indiana. I know there's a lot of naysayers, myself being one of them, about one, Indiana having way too many players that are in their fifth, sixth, seventh years of college football, about 24, 26 years old. Huge advantage. It doesn't matter if they were 0 stars or 1 stars coming out of high school. If you play college football, you're a 4 year, 6 year, 5 year starter. Those are huge reps comparable younger players that they're going up against, even though they are 5 star players. Whenever there's an age gap like that, it does make a difference. And people say, oh, well, it's great coaching, it's great coaching. Yeah, it is. But whenever you're being coached for 6 years compared to 2 or 3 years, it's also a huge difference and a huge advantage. So you got to give credit for Indiana gaming the system. That's how they built their roster very well within the rules. Should it be the rules? I think that's a conversation that college football needs to have. Will they? Probably not. They're incompetent and they usually create terrible rules for the worst of the game. Not much in the respect of competitive football. So don't expect anything to change anytime soon from the NCAA standpoint. That's why college football is in a mess right now. So now let's talk about some of the NFL prospects, and let's start with Fernando Mendoza because he's received a lot of praise this season, but also a lot of flack, especially after last night's game. So for me, we've talked about this the last couple of weeks. Fernando Mendoza has been a great quarterback due to his accuracy, his pinpoint accuracy. He did have a good time throwing the football last night. There was some huge drops from a couple of the Indiana wide receivers, but he came up when they needed him, and those were those 2 throws to Charlie Becker, and then, of course, the rushing touchdown. But is he an NFL quarterback? Should the Raiders take him number one? In the group chat, I was talking about how if I was the Raiders, I would not take him number one. The Raiders have so many issues, and a quarterback, whether it's Mendoza or whether it was Dante Moore, isn't going to fix it. And this could be a massive setup for Fernando Mendoza. This could be a massive setup for his failure as well, which is, if I was him, would be a little nervous about. And same thing for the Raiders. More so if I'm the Las Vegas Raiders. No offensive line, not many weapons on the outside. As we saw last night, Mendoza relied on his weapons, relied on Charlie Becker, his running backs, the RPO game. Not a lot of it. A lot of the game was on his own shoulders. On that fourth down, on all three of those fourth downs, sure. But the rest of the game is pretty much with his teammates. And we also saw what happens whenever he gets pass rushed and roughed up a little bit. Shaky. He didn't have his best performance. Again, 6 of 16 on third down, but this was one of his worst performances of the season and in the playoff. Of course, national championship, you're going against the best team that you've played all season, in my opinion, and I think so. I think Miami was better than Ohio State even before they played. But Mendoza was 16 of 27 for 186. That is nothing special. If you watch what he did against Oregon, where he looked incredible, way different defense. Oregon's defense, a lot of hype with Dan Lanning, but no, they were nowhere to the level of this Miami defense. And they gave Mendoza trouble, and they didn't put him in situations to push the ball downfield. They really didn't have to because they had to leave for the whole game. But still, we're not talking about Mendoza as a college quarterback. We're talking about him as an NFL quarterback. Would you bank your franchise on drafting him if you're the Raiders? I wouldn't. I'd rather have an offensive tackle or trade that pick to somebody who does love Mendoza and try to, get as many picks as you can for him. That's what I would do. So I believe the criticism of Mendoza for relying on his teammates, relying on his receivers making crazy plays. Charlie Becker made two incredible catches that saved the game for Indiana. Block punt also saved the game. Missed field goal from Miami. Yes, but still, he did win the Heisman. But if you look at as compared to recent quarterbacks that have gone number one, or have even the top 10 quarterbacks recently, prospects in the last 10 years, compared to Mendoza, I don't know. I think Mendoza's pretty low on that list. You have great quarterbacks like Burrow, Drake May. There's tons of them. I don't have them all listed here. But if you just go through the draft classes, you know that there's been way better prospects, in my opinion, than Mendoza. Yes, it's a great story. Yes, he's a gamer. He plays tough for his teammates. He showed that last night. But are you going to bank your NFL franchise on him? Me, no. I'd rather have a left tackle. If I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, they have zero offensive line. If you watch the Raiders anytime this year, Geno Smith had about 2 seconds to throw the ball. Any quarterback that was back there for the Raiders didn't have a great time. But all in all, they need offensive line help. I don't think they should draft Mendoza, but they probably will because of how desperate they are right now. And Mendoza probably will sell a lot of Raiders jerseys, so we know that also plays a factor. When you're talking about the Raiders, they need a star. They got Bowers, Ginty. Now you just need the quarterback, so I wouldn't be surprised if take a chance on him. Carson Beck, I don't really think he's got many opportunities in the NFL level. He might be able to, but as we saw last night, he had all day in the pocket to throw the football. Nothing, he had I think one touchdown, but Mark Fletcher was the star of the show. We know he's been a good running back all season. We've talked about him. And of course, true freshman Malachi Tony. He had a great game. So these are all things that you need to look at when we're thinking about the next level and this Miami offensive line, all NFL players, and they showed that last night in the passing game. In the running game, they struggled, on fourth and short, third and short, they struggled all night, but they still did a great job in the running game. It just wasn't as good as you would expect, especially in short yardage situations. But in the passing game, Carson Beck had all day to throw, but he had plenty of time to do it, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. Deanna, Pons at corner, he had a great game. I think he can play at the next level, even though he is short. I'm sure he'll get an opportunity somewhere. But last night, he kind of stole the show there. Whether he did have a couple pass interference calls or not, he still had a great game. Surratt's got a big body. He had a few huge drops in that game, so not his best game. But again, against top competition, didn't show up. Charlie Becker, he showed up. Now that there's somebody that he's been hot all college football playoffs, to be honest with you, but he really popped last night and made himself some money. I know he's a sophomore. I don't know if he's been redshirted or not, so I don't know if he could go out into the draft. But again, he made him some money last night. And of course, the Miami defensive line, the star of the show, they played incredible from Ruben Bain to the opposite end. Even the defensive backs of Miami, O'Connor struggled, but a lot of the other defenders for Miami, they had a great game. Hurricanes just come up short here. Lack of discipline with the penalties. There was pass interference that were called on Miami, but they weren't calling them on Indiana, and so on and so forth. But to me, the difference in the game was the special teams. Missed field goal changed the game. Block punt changed the game. Number 87, Bauman doesn't even block at all. Guy runs right past him. That was the ball game. So opportunity was there. Indiana was the more disciplined team, and they got a win. That's why football is a three-facet game: offense, defense, special teams, then of course coaching. Mario Cristobal and Carson Beck got a delay of game to start the last drive of the game. They started with a false start, or a delay of game rather. Not ideal. And of course, Cristobal, great talent evaluator, but game management hasn't been the best. We've known that. We've seen it. And he came up short because of the discipline and because of special teams. So we'll talk more about this as we get closer to the draft. But just wanted to get on here and do a quick video, talk about Fernando Mendoza, this Miami game, and the national championship. Once again, thanks everyone for liking, subscribing, trolling, and follow for more. We'll see y'all.